Uh, Okay, well, I see that it is 6 o'clock, so I'm going to call this public hearing to order. And we've got a electronic meeting notice that I will read for anyone in the any of our attendees. And that's just to let you know that this live council meeting is being recorded. Your personal information, including your voice, name, opinions, any other personal information disclosed by you during the meeting is collected by the city under the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act. And it's for the purpose of your participation in public input. If you have any questions about collection of your personal information, you can contact dco@roslyn.ca. If you do not wish your personal information to be collected, please do not join the meeting. And in order to run this smoothly, if you wish to comment on an agenda item, please raise your hand. And I'll call on you by name. But we are first going to start with our public hearing, and this is the rezoning for the old City Hall building. I'm going to ask the corporate officer or whoever of staff is there willing to address this, how the public hearings were publicized and correspondence or petitions that we've heard on this item.
Public hearings were publicized in accordance with the Local Government Act. And today we received one submission for clarification in regards to what was actually being rezoned, which we identified as just the facility of the old City Hall building, and heard nothing else after that.
Okay, thank you. So now I'm going to call on the public. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to comment on this matter? And I'm looking for hands. And I don't see any. I'm going to ask one more time. Anyone who is there as an attendee wish to talk about this item, or you're just ready for the regular meeting? Looks like ready for the regular meeting. So we'll take a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Whoa.
Hold on.
Yeah.
What? I'm waiting for something. Rachel?
I think Rachel was unmuted.
Oh, okay. No, I think we're okay. We're okay. That was something else, a different conversation. Okay, so we have adjourned the public hearing. We will now have our regular meeting. I'll call this to order. I will not read the electronic meeting notice again because I just did it. And so I just want to say public input, you're limited to 2 minutes, and we have a really big agenda tonight. So if you're coming in on public input or you're coming in as a petition, as a delegation, I'd really appreciate it if you would stay to the time allotted for you and be respectful of everyone's time. So first off, I would like to get a motion to, first off, we will do public input. So raise your hand if you wish to speak in public input. You can speak to us about anything on the agenda or anything else you wish to talk about. Is there anyone there who wishes to speak? I'm looking and I'm not seeing. Okay. So we have got we'll do the approval of the agenda, and I'd like to amend it to move the microflats item up from 8A to 7A. And I guess that is the only thing I'm going to move up, because unless I don't see anybody else in there that is here for something else. So with that amendment, moving the microflats 8A up to 7A. Get a motion? Okay, Janice moves it, Dirk seconds it. All in favor of the agenda as amended? Okay, great. So now we have our honored guest, Jackie Drysdale, to speak to council on seniors housing. So Jackie, you can have up to 15 minutes, and thank you. We did read your submission that was sent today or dropped off today, and appreciate that. So please share your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much. And it is a pleasure for me to be in this experiment of making a presentation to council. So if I'm too close, if I'm too far away, just let me know.
You're perfect.
Okay.
You're perfect. We can hear you. And Susan.
Okay, thanks very much. I'd just like to say that I am a Roslyn senior. I have lived in this community for 46 years, and I've been very much involved over the years with the city council, regional district, Golden City Days, downtown streetscaping, chair of the Heritage Commission for the last 10 years, et cetera, et cetera. But I am speaking to you tonight in support of seniors housing in Rossland, and very specifically about a proposal that came before council, I think probably in June, and council decided to deny that rezoning. So for me, on July the 8th, I read the newspaper account of this proposal and the fact that council had turned it down. And the big question in my mind was why? The facility that was part of the rezoning application had everything in it, I felt, that was great and would provide a new option for Rossland seniors who have decided, or perhaps have been forced to, make a decision to leave their homes. And I just reiterate for you and also just for the public, just what the news coverage said, that there would be underground parking for all of the units. There would be a mixed unit size from 1 bedroom to 3 bedrooms. The majority would be 2 bedrooms. It would be wheelchair accessible. There would be 2 elevators in the building. It would be on the existing bus route. And there would be social meeting places within the building for residents to mix and mingle. And this to me was a really key point. Not a set of apartments, but a place that would allow residents to easily and seamlessly connect and to engage with others while maintaining their independence. Get-togethers, card games, coffee, exercise, visiting, age-friendly events, meetings, talks, asking for help with computers, somebody down the hall. And you can think of that worst case scenario when maybe there's a snowstorm outside, but all of this could continue to go on. The place that was on the old Cook Avenue, the place is to be perhaps on the old Cook Avenue school grounds. It's a parcel that has sat idle for many years. It's large enough for such a facility. The height meets the recommendations. And currently it's a bit wild with trees, bushes, and weeds, if you've driven past, that have grown in over the years. All of Rossland knows that this is the last area of Rossland that would be suitable for such a development. At my age, I'm very interested in senior housing. I've had some experience with the situations in other communities, such as Kelowna and Summerland, as well as other more local ones for senior housing. We don't have any situations in Rossland for senior housing, with the exception of Esling Park Lodge. And the waiting list there is 58 people long. And according to the chairman of their council, they have cut off any further applications. All Rossland, I was going to say we do have the Golden City Manor on 2nd Avenue, but there are income restrictions here, so it's limited. So back to why it was turned down, and for me, what I could possibly do. I, first of all, I think the next day wrote to all of the newspapers with my questions as to why this development had been turned down. After I had tried to contact the developer, but I was told that he was away in the East visiting family, but he would give me a call when he got back to Rossland. So the newspaper articles went in. I did meet with Cesare a week later, and I had a chance to see his plans, and then approached council with a request to meet with you guys. And I was given 2 or 15 minutes. And guess what? I chose the latter. Yes. He told me that he had feedback from a lot of people, obviously, mostly the seniors. And they told him what they would be interested in. And it would be key to getting their support. Then he went out and got the design, which would meet those, and which is what was presented to council. Then I looked at the demographics for Rossland, and the best that I could do was to find the census data done in 2016 and published in 2017. And I found 625 people in Rossland between the ages of 55 and 64. And when I push it to 85, then there were 1,080 people in Rossland between 55 and up. And it's almost a third of our population. 70.5% of Rosslanders live in single family dwellings. Those with one person are 445, and those with two people are 585. So we've got an aging population. I then read a report on housing needs for seniors. It was a report commissioned in 2017 by the federal, provincial, and territorial ministers responsible for seniors in Canada. And it was published in 2019, so we're getting closer to our date. And it was written by the Employment and Social Development Department of the Canadian government. The emphasis for this report was to explore the recognized need of seniors for an ability to age in community. The report states this in many places, that it takes both a physical and a social environment to promote and sustain healthy, independent people, easily accessible and barrier-free. So once again, we have just the apartment versus this kind of a facility that was proposed. I also was able to watch council's deliberations in turning down the proposal to rezone parcel B of the development. It's a space that's fronted by Thompson Avenue, and it has two roads on either side of the property, with Cliff Street not open or maintained on the east side. And I had never realized that there was a road here, and I taught at Cook Avenue School as well. I then visited, the final thing I did, I visited the property in question with Cesario this past week to view the reality of the application, the setbacks, the transition in the neighborhood, road access, underground parking, and so on. The proposal could not infringe on anybody's neighbor property. And I do remember when I was on council the second time in 2005 or something like that to 8, and as a way to help people with their housing costs, council said that suites would be possible anywhere in the community. Well, yes, there was a lot of reaction to that, negative comments in the community, but we went ahead with it. Vancouver had done it, of course, before we had done it. But fast forward to now, and we don't have any complaints. And suites are becoming a very main part of new construction as well as the remodeling. So now, council, I am before you to ask that you have another look at this request for rezoning. Parcel B, the northern parcel of this block on the old Cook Avenue School grounds, is the only place large enough in Rossland for this facility. The facility have everything that an independent person living currently in their home in Rossland could ask for to maintain their independence, but to transition between their home and assisted living or long-term care. They could have mobility problems. Maybe they don't drive. Maybe the snow clearing is too much. Maybe the yard has got beyond their capabilities or even their interest. What about the energy? Anyway, the current proposal of 40 units exceeds the 24 units under the bylaw, but it does include the social aspects of a community within a community that requires space, as well as the cost of 2 elevators and the cost of the underground parking. The ability to spread these costs over 40 units rather than 24 or smaller makes it affordable. There's a need for this type of housing in Rossland. Diversification, of course, is the goal. We've been talking about it. But right now, independent seniors faced with a few problems like mobility and health concerns, and I say, and energy, are forced to leave their community to find a new place to nest. Several real estate agents have said, hey, it's a good time to sell your home in Rossland, but you better have a good place to move to. So many seniors have paid their taxes, volunteered their time and expertise to the community in so many ways, and enjoyed the benefits of living here. They love their community. It is their home. It would be such a shame to have these people leave their community, their friends, their churches, their familiarity and use of all of our attractions that makes our community unique and enjoyable, because there's no place to move to in Rossland. Now, for your consideration, I have just added a few things. Is there any thought of creating a new zone for parcel B? Call it large residential senior housing. You won't have any more applications for this. Secondly, the city planner must be swamped at this time with all the subdivisions and new building that is happening in Rossland. Sticking with the current zoning is a way to quickly handle requests, but you can negate the need to look at something that is creative, outside the box, and so important for Rossland and senior citizens at this time. Thirdly, does council need a task force? There are any number of seniors who would work with council and the planning staff on doing the deep dive that may be needed for council to proceed with this proposal. You've done it before with the road and the intersections. The OCP is currently being developed. What better time to get it right for the next number of years? I was involved with the 2008 one. Timing is important. This is a big project. It affects so many people now and in the future for everybody in Rossland. It's an option that doesn't currently exist. This proposal for senior housing in Lower Rossland does not rely on funding from City Hall, but it is a boon for future tax revenues, and it frees up homes for people who want to come and live here. And it is what council can do for Rosslanders. So in summary, ladies and gentlemen, would council please reconsider the proposal for rezoning parcel B in Lower Rossland to accommodate a seniors housing project? Please think about the importance of, quote, aging in place, and how council can best cover the interests of Rosslanders now and in the future.
Thank you, Jackie. That was very nice to hear your perspective on that. Stuart, you have a question for Jackie?
No, I'm going to have a stab at answering why. I believe if you saw our response to the application, you would have noted our conversation around it, which was that we are open to being creative and flexible and coming up with a site-specific zoning for that site. But it takes two to tango. The developer, from my understanding, had a bit of a take or leave it approach. This is what he wanted to do, what he thought was economically to his advantage, and that didn't meet the complicated requirements of our official community plan, the many different things we have to consider. It's not just the argument for seniors housing, which I certainly agree with. You make great points, but that would require the developer to work with the city to be creative, to be a little bit flexible, to meet some of those broader requirements, because meeting the needs of seniors is not, it's an important thing, but it's not our only thing we have to consider in these situations. So I think we did instruct planning staff to be open to entering into some sort of creative solution to getting a development on that site, which we'd all like to see.
Yeah, we would definitely like to see it. We are very supportive of senior housing. We like the idea. There were just some features in this particular proposal that were, against our rules that, consider the whole community. So I don't want to get a big discussion about it. Stuart, I don't want to get in a big discussion about it because we do have a really packed agenda. But Jackie, I had sent you an email on July 22nd. I don't know if you saw it, but it laid out some of the reasons of why we couldn't approve this one. And we're hoping that the developer will come back, make some adjustments to it, and bring us something that does fit. That's our hope. So
Thank you, Mayor. But I have to appreciate, to go back to Stuart, he was the one person on council who talked about the economy of it. And I thought that, to develop something, you have to have something that the developer can get a bit of profit from, but something that's going to add revenue to the city. So Stuart, I really did appreciate that comment that came up in your discussions.
We do appreciate that, and we were never holding the developer to the 24 unit limit. We indicated that we were flexible, that we did want to work with him, but that that has to be in a spirit of flexibility on the developer's part as well, and that just wasn't there at that point.
okay, so thank you, Jackie. We appreciate you coming, and we do recognize that this is an important issue, and we hope to have some solutions there on in the future. And as Stuart says, it takes two to work together. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, council, we have some minutes to approve. Let's see, what do we got? July 12th. We have minutes of the regular meeting to be adopted. Can I get a mover? Okay, Chris moves and Andy seconds. Any comments on those? All in favor? Okay, and Terry, I'm not going to ask you to come in on those for the minutes. If you want to speak to something, let us know, but otherwise I will just count you down as a yes for these. Minutes of the public hearing on July 12th. Minutes for the public hearing, a mover, Janice moves, Chris seconds. Any comments? No comments, all in favor? Okay. Minutes of the Heritage Commission meeting on the 19th. Mover, Dirk, second, Andy, comments? All in favor? Okay. And minutes of the design review panel be adopted. This was on July 20th. Mover. Janice. And okay, well, let's let Terry move that one. He came in. Terry moves that one and Janice seconds it. Any comments on that? All in, Terry, did you have a comment? You're good. All in favor?
No comment, just, yep, in favor.
Okay, good. Okay, so now moving on, we've got referrals from prior meetings. So there is the correspondence from Cabin. If I'm not sure if anyone needs to comment on that or if we want to just move into the agenda items. Does anyone have comments they'd like to share on the, yes, Dirk?
I just think it was a little bit incorrect in that we didn't defer this to see how we could reject it. We deferred it to get an legal opinion as to whether or not we could reject it. We weren't seeking guidance on how to do something, just whether or not we could.
Yeah.
It's an important distinction if it's going to be public.
Yeah, that's true. Stuart, did you have your hand up? No. Okay. You're muted.
Yeah, I just the tone of the letter seemed to be that that we were disputing that this was forestry as would be practiced on Crown land, when I don't think that was ever in dispute. I think, well, I certainly understood that to be that this is the way forestry is normally practiced on, on land. I wasn't saying that it was done to a lower standard in any way. The wider point was that I and some of us felt that this didn't meet the broader objectives of the community, not that it doesn't meet normal forestry practices.
Okay, great. Yeah, good distinction there too. Okay, anything else, or we'll move on to the first development permit application? Seeing no hands. Okay, so the staff recommendation is that the city issue development permit for the property legally described, and I won't read the description, located on the south side of Granite Mountain with the following conditions, and there are 6 conditions there, which I also won't read all of those. They are in your packet. Do I have a mover, or do I have someone who wants to make a different motion? Dirk?
Yeah, I'd make a different motion unless somebody wanted to move this one.
Does anyone want to move this one? Okay. Oh, Janice? You're muted.
I know I didn't say anything because I just want to move this one.
Oh, you want to move this one? Okay, so is there a seconder for this one? Okay, Dirk seconds it. Okay, discussion, Janice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the idea of logging on private land within the city limits. I don't think any of us picture that being a particularly attractive thing. But, you know, there are some discussions that have come out. This is an old growth forest. This whole area burned 70 or 80 years ago. It is private land. The applicant has met all the city's prescribed guidelines as a reforestation, trying to put an extra syllable in there, plan, along with a deposit held by the city for a value of 125% of the reforestation costs. I mean, it's, you know, and we went and got a legal opinion because we wanted to know what would happen depending on where this went. And I really don't, I don't feel comfortable putting taxpayer dollars at risk to spend more money on legal fees when we can be doing many more better things with it, including things that'll help reduce greenhouse gases and provide services and. So based on the legal opinion that we got, I'm in favor of this motion as suggested by staff.
Okay, Dirk?
Yeah, I will be voting against this motion. I think that the OCP in its entirety does not support this kind of activity. And there are a lot of things that we can refer to. Stuart puts them forward for discussion at the end. There are others. A lot of Section 33 specific to Red Mountain does not support this. They support development and walkable arrangements and things that don't even allude to forestry. All of the OCP is clear that the overarching theme is doing as little as possible to the environment to accommodate development. And this is not in any way like that. This is perhaps checking off a few forestry restriction guidelines, but this is a logging application put forward as a development permit, and I will not support it.
Okay, Stuart?
Yeah, I'm with Dirk on this one. I mean, it seems pretty clear in the development permit guidelines for Red Mountain that development activities that will require vegetation clearing shall be limited to only those areas that require leveling, roadways, driveways, and actual development. That isn't the case here. This isn't a development. This is an attempt to log the property. You know, there's no dispute there. Even the legal advice we got sort of, you know, agreed that there was no, you know, seemed to rest on the fact that it doesn't allow for forestry, but there's nowhere in our development permit guidelines or in our official community plan that require us to come up with specific, you know, different regulations for forestry. You know, we have guidelines that apply to that development permit area and all the lands within the city. I don't see any exception for applying them. The only exception that I could actually see was the private managed forest lands, and this isn't in that category, therefore it doesn't apply.
Okay, comments? Others? Andy?
I also agree with Dirk and Stuart on this as well, and I will be voting against it. I also think too that one of the premises that were pointed out was to make the community more fire resilient by removing trees. And I don't think that's been the mandate of the community at all. One of the things that we have recognized is, yes, we want to make our community safer, but there are other ways to fireproof our community. Complete removal of trees in a clear-cut logging situation is obviously going to reduce fuel, but there's too many other values to those trees and property that need to be taken into consideration here. Fireproofing can be done, leaving timber standing. As we've talked with our fire smart neighbors and our consultant, we know what's possible. For me, there's a lot of things that just don't add up for this project, so I will be voting against.
Okay, Chris, you have some comments?
Yeah, although there are many conditions that are put in front here for the applicant to adhere to, all of them fit within what he is allowed to do, and I'm not necessarily willing to put our city in jeopardy on a legal standpoint for this. It could end up being long and deep and expensive for our taxpayers. I don't want to put my hand up for this, but I'm going to for that reason.
Okay, Terry? Is Terry still with us?
Hi. Yes, I sure am. Thanks. Yeah, I'm really sitting on the fence. I do not want to, again, as Chris and Janice have indicated, I don't want to put our town at jeopardy. I'm not at all in favor of the smell of this development permit. I just don't see the intent behind it as anything other than logging. I'm going to vote against it, and with the caveat that I think, or with the sort of disclaimer that I believe we should really exhaust and explore more deeply, the intent behind this and how it might fit within our existing guidelines. It feels like a treacherous slope that we're on, but those trees once cut are gone and we can never get them back, and I'm willing to put some of those taxpayer dollars on the line to further explore any other options.
Okay, thanks. Now, Janice, I think you had your hand up. Dirk also has his hand up. Do you want to speak? Because we're going around second time now. So Janice, you want to speak?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I found it very interesting. I mean, I know this is a development permit application, and certainly in my mind when I first saw it, I went, well, where's the development? But through the process of having the information clarified legally, and also through our planning department, I've learned that development permits in any development area are necessary for any action that you take on the land. And the legal opinion certainly pointed out that there are three factors that are covered in this area. One is environmental, one is geotechnical, and one is actually the built, what's the word I'm looking for? The built environment.
Sure.
Yeah, the building, yes. And so this particular permit is falls under the environmental portion only. When we go for a legal, this is the part that I am challenged with when we go and we get a legal opinion, especially from a municipal lawyer. We rely on that lawyer to look at our OCP and, determine are these issues that, do these, and Stuart did a great job of going through it and bringing up a bunch of things that support his position. Absolutely. And but I thought it was pretty clear from the response we got that a lot of those items that seem to support that position really would only be applicable if it was geotechnical, or only applicable if there was actually building. And this is just acting upon the land, so we can only look at the environmental sections, which are covered through the Forestry Act, and through the involvement of a professional forester in the project. Once I've gotten that kind of legal input, I feel like ignoring it really would be irresponsible.
Dirk,
Yeah, I I certainly don't think ignoring the legal input is what we are doing. I don't think that the legal input was particularly clear. It left wiggle room, and I think that our spirit of our OCP document does not allow for this. I think that this goes against what the community intends, and certainly it's a great document, and in every document, no matter how good it is, there are caveats and loopholes and ways to do other things that don't meet the intention of the document. And I think this is one of those things that really does not in any way meet the intention of the document. And so I feel that we are uncomfortable voting against this. And I think that given the spirit of this document or where it's going, I don't think that we are opening ourselves up for any kind of legal problems. That is really up to the applicant. I think it's clear that this is not what the community wants. We are here to support the community, not an applicant that has found a way to press that. And I will stand behind that.
Stuart,
Yeah, I actually thought the legal opinion we got supported our position. He made it very clear that we're not here to make arbitrary judgments about whether we like forestry as it's practiced in BC or not. That our decisions do need to be grounded in the official community plan. We're not here to make arbitrary judgments. We're here to interpret, the community's values through the official community plan and apply them to the development permit process. That's what he told us. He voted, legal precedent for that, and cautioned us against going against it. And according to the development permit guidelines, it says that you shouldn't be clearing vegetation. And best practices of the city doesn't define what those best practices are. The only thing we have to go on is the official community plan. I went through the official community plan in search of guidance on this topic, and I circulated what I came up with. It seemed pretty definitive to me. So I feel like we're on strong ground here.
okay, I just want to ask if staff has any comments at all. You don't have to, but just if you do, listening to this discussion, if you want to add anything.
No,
No,
comments
the
from
only
this end.
comment,
Go ahead, Stacy.
and the only comment I have is that, the application has to meet the development permit guidelines. It's not about, this is not an OCP amendment application or a zoning application, that it's an application that needs to fit the development permit guidelines. That's the only comment that I'd make. And Stuart has pointed that out, but a few other councillors brought in a bunch of other OCP policies. And in this case, that's
The OCP is only relevant when we're trying to interpret what the best practices are when we're interpreting 33.8 in the development permit process. It's essentially that's what it really just comes down to. To me, it's the development permit process specifically says it must be limited. I can quote it again if you want, but it's got to be limited to those areas that are actually being developed in accordance to the best management practices as determined by the city of Roslyn. I don't want to make that stuff up. I want to make sure it's based on something. That's what our legal opinion told us. So therefore I went searching through for some sort of valid interpretation of what best practices when it came to clearing land and cutting down trees might be in the context of best practices in the city of Roslyn. I'm not trying to give my personal opinion here. I'm trying to interpret the development permit process as I read it, and the OCP provides guidance to that.
I think we have a situation where we have an applicant that's putting a proposal forward that would be suitable for a forestry project, an industry project in Crown Land or something. But we're a municipality, and our development is all about people clearing their land to put houses in there or apartments or something. We're not. So this is very uncomfortable for us, right? The whole clear cutting idea. We had this happen once before, and I actually thought that happened prior to 2008, but I actually thought that we put procedures in place that would prevent this from happening again, because at the time that was a very contentious issue, and that one sort of went through. And so I thought we had gotten to the point where we didn't have to revisit this again. Okay, unless there's any other comments, I'm going to call the question. This is on the staff recommendation to approve the DP. All in favor? Okay, and opposed? Okay, so. and
Here, I'm opposed.
Gary, okay, so 5-2, that fails. Okay, so we are going to move on to the development permit for 3052 Highway 3B. And this is also has the similar conditions 1 through 6. So I'll have a motion. The staff recommendation is that we approve it, issue a development permit, and I'll take a recommendation for that or for something else. Janice.
I'll move the motion.
Okay, Janice will move the city motion and a seconder. Chris seconds. Okay, Janice, you want to say anything different?
Nothing different.
Okay. Chris, you want to say something?
Nothing to, unfortunately.
Okay, anybody else want to comment? Dirk.
I do find this one trickier and a little more gray than the other ones, or the other one. This is one of 3 gray ones, I suppose. But again, I'd go back to the fact that this is not an application to develop anything. This is an application to force. And if this came in with 3-unit complex in the middle of it and they needed to clear all the trees for that, it'd be a different story, but that's not what this is. And I don't think it's unrealistic to ask that we limit the development permits to development. That's me.
I agree with Dirk.
Dirk. Okay. Other comments? Anybody? Terry, do you have anything on this one?
I maintain the same position I did with the previous one as well. So I'm with Dirk and Stuart.
Okay. Andy, you had your hand up?
Same. I'm going to also agree with this one. I also think that it appears that the impacts on the neighbors will be greater for these 3 parcels that are being considered too. And I think that has to be taken into consideration as well. So yeah, I'm going to as well not approve this.
Okay. I mean, I feel the same as Dirk. If this came with a proposal for development, it would be a completely different situation. You know, they could come in, follow all our rules about that. But having it clear cut first and then come back with a development idea, maybe, just, you know, doesn't seem right. The other thing that bothered me on some of these others, there was no screening against the highway. It's 3. There was some on Ritchie Road on the one that hits that, but that just, I don't know, it's just pretty brutal. Stuart.
Yeah, it's just not compatible with 33.8. It says we've got a development permit guideline that specifically says limited to the development, and that's not what he's doing. So come back with a plan.
Okay, I am going to call the question unless anybody has any other comments. All in favor of the staff recommendation to approve, Janice and Chris. Okay, and opposed? The rest of us. Terry, you're opposed? Okay.
Opposed.
Okay, so we've got the next one. This is Lot A, and this is, well, it's on 3B as well. It has the same similar 6 conditions. So do I have a mover on that one or a different motion? Janice? Okay, Janice. And Andy, you seconded that, did you? Yeah, okay, Andy seconded. Anything else you want to say, Janice? Similar, we'll just repeat your comments from before. Andy, do you want to say anything about it?
Same.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments? Is there anything new about this parcel that makes it different than the others? Okay, I'm just going to call the question then. All in favor of the staff recommendation? Okay, Janice is in favor. Chris is in favor. Okay, and opposed? Everyone else?
Opposed.
Okay, Terry also opposed. Okay. Okay, so then we have development permit 125 Granite Road. So do we have a mover for the staff recommendation to issue the development permit? Janice, I'm looking at you. Okay, Janice, and a seconder, Chris seconds it. Anything new here? No. Chris?
No,
Just
I
gonna
wish
call
so.
the- Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of the staff recommendation to issue the permit? Janice, Chris, okay, and opposed? Okay, and Terry? Okay, Terry's there too. Okay, well, that was not the session that we wanted. Like if we had something that came to us that we could feel good about and a development there, that would be a different thing. We would be happy to see some other things happen there. Okay, so now we're into policies and bylaws, and we've moved microflats 8A up. So that would be the first one that we will talk about. And microflats, let me get to microflats because it's back here. Okay, so this is request for council decision that we issue a development permit for the development on the property at Red Mountain, and it's subject to the following conditions, and it's A through E, and they are all standard, basically saying it conforms with what they've put in the application. Do I have a mover? Chris moves and Stuart seconds. Okay, Chris?
I think this is an example of a professional development permit being put in, and I think it's going to fit with what we need up at both Red and within our community as well.
Okay, thank you. Stuart?
Yeah, I mean, it's all interesting to read the design review committee's considerations of the aesthetic choices that are made up there, and I've got my own personal perspective on these things, but I don't think that's going to change that in any material way. I do struggle with these discussions about roof lines and massing and these sorts of cosmetic things. I think ultimately it meets the requirements, and the market will decide if people want to buy it. So I've got no problems with it.
Okay, other comments? Sure.
I just wondered if there were plans to some way to prevent Joe Blow from buying 57 of them as, Airbnbs, or, they're pretty cool little spots, that it would be a shame if they were lost to a corporate entity. But that seems irrelevant in this decision, but.
Yeah, it's an item of curiosity for sure. I was curious about that too, whether like they could be used for employee housing, or they could be, for sale, for rent, whatever. But that is irrelevant to what we're looking at now. But it would be something maybe the developer could answer our queries later. Don't think they can really control who buys though, right? If somebody's going to buy 5 of them or 10 of them or 50 of them. Anyway, it's quite an interesting and exciting project. It's going to kind of bring the base area together in a way. And I like the fact that they're using that pedestrian way. So that's good. Okay, any other comments on this? Terry, did you want to chime in on this one?
Thanks, Kathy. No, I think it meets all the guidelines. Again, at the design review panel, there was discussion about the roof lines as well as the massing and some of the front-facing things. But I think this is an interesting project, and again, provides diversity with housing mix. But from what this is about in terms of form and character, I think it's a good fit for down there.
Okay, great. So I'll call the question. All in favor of issuing the development permit for this project, microflats? Okay.
I'm in favor.
In favor. Okay, and no one opposed. Great, thanks. Okay, so now let me just give me a minute here to go back to wherever it was we were supposed to be. I think we're back on 7A. Which is, okay, so now we're coming back to visit some we'd seen before. So this is a zoning amendment 2760. This is 1615 Nevada Street. We're going to do third reading, and then we're going to adopt if it passes third. So can I have a mover for third reading? Dirk and Janice. Okay, comments? Nothing? Nothing? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of third reading? Okay, let's do it again.
In favor.
Who wants, okay, thank you, Terry. Who wants to adopt? Let's let Terry adopt. Terry, you're making the motion to adopt. And Andy is
I
seconding.
do.
Okay, Andy's seconding it. Any other concerns there? All in favor? Okay, good. All right, now we are doing another one. This is for 1508 Park Street. Again, it's third reading for this zoning amendment, and then we'll adopt it. So a mover. Stuart and Janice, any comments on this one?
Nope.
No, yeah, we've seen it before. All in favor? Okay, good. See, this is good. Stacy's going to get back to her vacation sooner, the faster we go. Okay, a motion to adopt this one on Park. Dirk and Janice, comments on adoption? Think not. All in favor? Carries there. Okay, now we have zoning 2762. This is for Second Avenue. And this again is a third reading and adoption. So do I have a mover? Somebody put your hand up. Chris and Andy, comments on this one? Nope. All in favor? Okay,
In favor.
good, thank you. Adoption? Okay, Andy and Dirk? No comments, all in favor? Okay, we're good.
Favor.
Okay, and Terry's there too, thank you. Okay, now we've got zoning amendment 2763. This is for 1312 Victoria. Again, another third reading and adoption. We're getting a lot of things cleared out of Stacy's inbox. So let's get a mover. Janice, seconder, Stuart, any comments on this one? Nobody? Okay, all in favor of third reading?
In favor.
Stuart's there and Carrie's there. Okay, adoption. Let's do adoption. Andy and Chris. All in favor? I'm not even gonna ask. There we go. Okay, good. Okay, now we're moving on. I think Stacy can leave. I think we're done with planning stuff. She can go have fun. We are doing policy review. This is for community grant funding. And this is that we approve the grant funding as amended. So there are a couple little changes in there. Do I have a mover? Stuart moves, Dirk seconds. Stuart?
All the changes seem reasonable to me.
Okay, Dirk?
Just on page 149, I wondered why we replaced people with disability with underrepresented or at-risk groups. Those seem like two different things to me. I would prefer to add underrepresented and at-risk and not neglect people with disabilities.
Yeah, that seems fair. Okay. Staff, is there any comment on that? There was not a particular reason for changing it out, so we can add it back.
I think that sounds great.
Okay. Okay, Stuart, did you have your hand up again for something?
No. I was just going to get wordsmithy on that, but I won't bother.
Okay. Well, I have one. I don't think this is wordsmithy, but it might be. In the manual, 2.1 requires that admission be free or nominal cost, but that's inconsistent with the requirement that we ask groups to fundraise and cover their own costs and reduce reliance on the city. So I think that should be taken out. They can charge whatever admission they want and people will pay it or they won't. And that way they're covering their costs or they're making money for their cause or whatever they're doing. I don't think we should restrict them to that. And I don't know if there was a reason to have that in there. Anybody have any comments on that? Janice?
Well, I would think that the reason that the free or nominal charge comment would be in there is because we're supporting them with tax dollars from all members of the community. And so we want to make sure that if we're supporting them with everyone's tax dollars, that there are no barriers to everyone attending if they want to.
Well, I suppose that's true, but these are groups that are often what they're doing is fundraising for other things that they're doing that benefit the community. So I don't know, it just seems inconsistent to me.
Where are you looking at specifically, Kathy?
It's page 142 in the policy manual, 142 in our packet. It's in the policy manual. And then it was again on 150 on the eligibility checklist. I was just going to suggest that we delete the reference to free or nominal. I mean, Janice makes a good point. I don't know what council thinks about it, so maybe.
Why don't we make it reasonable admission?
Oh yeah, that's much better. Make it reasonable admission. Okay, everybody good with that? Dirk?
Just that I agree with Janice's point. I think that it's public dollars supporting something. So there should be a requirement for it to be
Proportionate.
cost of entry. But on the same side, I mean, we look at the financial records in the next application, and if they're not being able to sustain themselves without charging ridiculous amounts, then, you know, they don't get supported. So
Yeah.
I'm easy either way, but
I think reasonable, take free and nominal and put in reasonable, and that kind of smears it up enough that hopefully it'll still be reasonable, you know, and people won't be a benefit, won't be anything. Okay, other than with that amendment, one word change. Are we good to go? Call the question, all in favor? Okay. Okay, Terry, you in favor?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so now we have risk management, public works inspection and maintenance schedule, and this is as presented. There were no changes here. Everybody happy with the way it goes? Take a mover, Janice and Andy. Any comments? No comments. Stuart has a comment.
Yeah, I just found that it's very broad direction compared to some things we do, like compared to, like, for example, the policy towards how we inspect our reservoirs is very, very brief, and yet the detail we go into for how we inspect sidewalks is, you know, super detailed. So I was just wondering on what basis we choose certain things to have super specific policy direction, and other things we're happy with, like, you know, the briefest of one-word summaries.
Well, we're governed by provincial law on a lot of things, so there isn't a lot of choice, and we also follow the guidelines of our insurance and the stuff about the sidewalks and all of that is definitely part of insurance. So,
But surely it's important that we, you know, when we inspect our water supply, for example, you know,
right.
we presumably there's actually, they probably have more detailed protocols.
Yes, they do.
And they're probably governed by legislation as well.
They are.
But we don't require council feedback on that. And I'm not saying we should. It just seems like, you know, maybe it's because the public are concerned about sidewalks or something, but it just seemed a bit disproportionate that we have a whole bunch of things covered with the briefest of policy, and we have a few things that we get into the weeds of detail.
Right. Well, and it does depend on liability and what's covered and what we have to do provincially. Scott, you started to come on there. Do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, this is really high level. Basically, each one of those inspection has a detailed procedure and policy and documentation around it. It's just so that council understands, and basically our policy, this is how we do it annually on a complaint basis. So our municipal insurance association or our insurance understand what the policy states in. But yeah, there's definitely more detail within each inspection.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting, I don't want to second guess what you're doing out there. I presume there's a whole lot of stuff going on, and I'm fine with the level of detail here. It just seemed, you know, in contrast with the following policies we're going to review, it just seems we approach these different things in very different ways. And why, you know, should we do all in the same way, or I don't know, maybe we just do it because that's the way we've always done it.
Okay. Any other staff comments on that? I mean, I really do think it does depend on what our insurance requires, and then provincial legislation. So the provincial legislation on those things like the dams and all of that are very specific, but so we don't have to put it in policy because we're already doing that. The other thing is just a standard of care and a standard of you know, risk for things like sidewalks, which we do look at in more detail, not in more detail than we do the dams, but it just in the policy, because that's more unique to us, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so all in favor of leaving it as it is? There we are. Okay. Dirk, you're there. Terry, you're there. Okay, the next one is the Public Works inspection maintenance of roads and sidewalks into a little more detail. Mover on that one. Andy and Janice. Okay, any comments? No changes on that one? Everybody good? All in favor? Okay, good. All right, now road, sidewalk, stair and snow removal policy. And this is as presented. Again, no changes on this one. The mover. Andy and Dirk, any comments? No comments, all in favor? Okay. Then we've got third-party call out, that we approve the third-party call out as presented. A mover? Chris, Janice, any comments?
Nope.
Chris? No, Janice, anybody?
Good.
Okay, this one I had one, I still keep going back to that form, and I appreciate that Scott sent out the script that's used when a call comes in, which I think is really helpful. But I still think the form, and this, I mean, staff could do whatever they wanted with this in terms of words, but I think it should say something like, be advised, regardless of the job, the minimum charge for an emergency call out is $400 if the issue is on your property, but your charges may be more depending on the job. Because I think if you have some dollar figure in there, people aren't going to come back and say, oh, well, he was only here 10 minutes or whatever, right? I think I really would like to see it on the form just for clarity. I'm going to let Scott speak and then Andy.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. The unfortunate thing, while we're there with the form in hand, we've already been called out. So the expectation has to be over that phone call to say, yes, you accept this. And then the signature happens.
For sure.
It doesn't hurt to have that on there. We can take a look at it. We have quite a few books already printed out with that already on there, to be honest with you. To change that will cost some money, but I think the biggest thing was the communication piece, is making sure that the resident understands the ramifications of that call out.
Okay, well, that makes sense. And maybe just you can have it down for the future, that just, because when somebody's calling, they're in a panic, they're in an emergency, they hear blah, 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 blah over the phone, and all they're thinking is get out here and help me. And you do that. But when you're there and you have a piece of paper in your hand and it said you've just agreed to a minimum of $400, if it's on their property, then perhaps that might cut down on some of the people who call us. Andy and then Janice.
I had chimed in on this the last time we talked about it, and I agree that it's important to have it on the paper, and that the person not only has committed verbally but also with signature, and that those fees are upfront. So
Yeah.
I would suggest it's important.
Yeah, and we can do it when the books need to be reprinted. I mean, it's not, it's not an emergency, but it would just help communicate with citizens, I think. Janice and then Chris.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, if I'm having an emergency at the house and I phone a commercial plumber to come and help me, or a commercial electrician, or I don't assume that they're going to come and fix my problem and it'll be free regardless of where it's located.
Yes, but you don't pay taxes to the entity that's coming to give you, and that's where the difference is, right? I think. I mean,
yeah, but I don't pay taxes to have the public works guys come and work on my private stuff in my yard. I pay them to keep my storm sewers clean and my sewers clean and my roads clean and lots of other things.
I absolutely agree. I'm just saying I've seen this confusion go on for years, and anything we can do to alleviate it, I think, is fine. But again, it doesn't have to be. If there's plenty of these books printed, let them go, and then just try and clarify it in the future. And like I said, the call script is really good. That really helps. Okay, Chris.
No different than when you phone your bank. Could we have a verbal disclaimer that is pre-recorded that we can push the button on when they call? Or when they do call, if they're leaving a message, that disclaimer is on the message?
When they call Public Works?
But if they call the city and they get the message machine about an emergency call, can a disclaimer be presented to them at that point?
That's the script, that when they call, that's what they get. That's what the piece of paper that, I mean, the document that Scott sent out has that listed about what the person who's taking the call at Public Works then says to the person calling in with the emergency.
Oh, okay, sorry, misunderstood.
They do specify it verbally, but sometimes, verbally isn't always right. Okay, Scott wanted to come in on that, and then Dirk.
Sorry, just making sure I'm here. Yeah, basically what happens is if it's an after hours call out, it will either go to a machine what states this is the emergency call number, or if you have the emergency call number, it goes to connections and the connection calls the on-call person, and then that's where we make the first contact. We read that script just to make sure they understand what exactly it is, and we can understand what, and we can try and help them over the line before we actually come out. So you know, to just do an automation, I'm not sure. I can take a look at things, definitely. There's all options out there, but again, we have a call answering service that goes through it first unless they have a direct line.
Perfect. Thank
I think they'd be happier getting a live person than they would a recording anyway, especially in the case of an emergency when their basement's filling with water. Dirk,
I think the difference in this case, you know, when a city worker comes out, you have no choice. That person comes out, it's them that's doing the job and only them. You know, when you call a plumber to come out to fix whatever's leaking, you don't like what they tell you, you can tell them to screw off and phone a different plumber or have 3 come out at the same time. So I think that the difficulty with this is that there isn't choice. And yes, there are reasons why we have the city person come out, but I think there has to be some flexibility and understanding because it's quite expensive.
yeah, okay. Stuart,
Can't you get plumbers to work on the infrastructure on your own property?
I think the issue is when they're not sure whether it's on their property or the city. That's when they call the city more than, they don't just call because they like the city better than they like a plumber. I mean, clearly if someone knows they're having an issue in their own house, they wouldn't call the city. It's when that unknown happens. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but I think that's where we get into trouble. Scott.
Yeah, that's the first thing we talk to the resident about. We try and clarify and help them out over the phone and make sure that they understand what, you know, of what may be the problems and what's going on if it's there on their property. And it would be a suggestion to call a plumber at that time. We're not here to make money by any means. We want to help the resident as best we can, but you know, to a certain point, we can't do work on their property.
Right. Okay, good discussion on this. I think we will just call the question on this as presented, as the motion says. All in favor? Okay, and Terry, you're in favor? Okay, so now third-party charges. So this is that we approve the third-party charges policy as presented. Again, no changes to this one this time. Janice and Dirk, any comments? Comments, Dirk, comment?
Yeah, maybe a question for Scott, but I mean, how often percentage-wise, I would assume 2/3 of the time, the call out requires a 4-hour minimum, because that would just be out of regular business hours, correct?
Absolutely. If there's a call out, what we do is, you know, we determine whether it's an emergency or not. Most of the times it's not an emergency and it can be wait till tomorrow. And we try to explain that to the resident as long as it's not impeding any of our health or if there's any infrastructure problems. As far as percentage of call outs, it all depends really. You know, again, I've only been here for 1.5 years now. So, but of my experience, you know, we don't have a lot. We don't have a lot, so.
Okay, Dirk?
Yeah, given that there's not a lot, I think that an individual unlucky enough to have an emergency off business hours should not necessarily be punished. And if there's really not a lot of calls, that seems like a pretty easy thing to spread over all emergency calls. I would prefer not to have the minimum 4-hour call out charge and have that absorbed a little bit by folks that are fortunate enough to have an emergency during business hours.
Scott, comment on that?
Yeah, I better be clear on that because that really does take some research. Last time I spoke on this, I do recall, and I don't have it up here, but just doing I think a 3-year look at third-party charges, it was between 9,000 and 14,000 per year that it would go on to the fellow neighbor taxpayers. So again, if you wanted for me to look into that a little further, I think for me to say there's not that many, if you look over a year's time, it could be a substantial amount to someone.
Okay. Dirk, do you want to make a motion on this or we're going to move on?
Yeah. I mean, it might hurt a little bit to have a slight tax increase, but you know, if I have an emergency off hours, I'd sure be appreciative. And I think people would understand that.
I think we have a policy of user pays.
Yeah, we do. Janice?
I was going to say that, you know, keep in mind too, that the emergency call out, it doesn't cost anybody anything if it's actually city infrastructure that's the problem. And it sure sounds like the initial call is very well vetted and they work really hard to determine what it is and to try and avoid having public works guys go out of regular business hours. Sorry, my screen is all jumping around, so I think I'm talking to you, but then I have to try and track you.
You're talking to us.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, if I don't want to do anything, you know, and we do have a policy, it's in our strategic plan even, that users pay, that we have a user fee basis for services rendered. You know, if someone isn't sure if it's, and often, I mean, these aren't usually things that are happening in the house. It's often, you know, there's a big hole in the front yard with water gushing out of it, or, you know, somehow sewer's backing up, and who knows where that problem is. But, you know, if the problem is on city property, regardless of what time of day it is or who calls it in, there's no charge to anyone. It just gets fixed.
That's
So
right.
the only charge happens is if they go through the whole process and the public works guys come out and it's actually on the taxpayers or the residents' property that the problem has occurred.
Yeah, I
Which
think
they would have to pay someone else to fix anyway.
that's right.
If they could fix it themselves, they wouldn't be calling us at 9 o'clock at night.
Mhm. Okay, Dirk.
Except that my issue is if it's a 20-minute fix, when they come out there and it's on your land and they need to do it, it's still a 4-hour charge. And I think that yes, I agree, user pay, but I mean, it's not user pay the whole thing for our recreational activities, or it's user pay, a user fee, but not, you know, the exact cost of whatever it is we're taking advantage of. So I just have a challenge with the 4-hour nature if it's a 20-minute job, and
It's the cost of the city, Dirk.
well, it is, but so is the arena or the pool. I mean, there's a cost to the
it's-
city, and users only pay a portion of that. So I think that,
Some of us disagree with that too.
sure.
All right, Janice had her hand up. Stuart, Janice had her hand up. Janice, go ahead.
The conversation got so good, I think I've forgotten what I was going to say. I was going to say the reason it's a 4-hour call out is because it's written in the collective agreement. So, you know, if the resident insists that it's an emergency and public works has to come out, we're calling people from their homes. You know, they're not at work sitting in their overalls waiting to go out. We're calling them from their homes. It's in the collective agreement. We have to pay them for 4 hours if we call them in on short notice.
Okay, so Chris,
Kathy?
Oh.
Kathy? Oh,
Terry, and then
Right.
Chris. Terry, go ahead.
thanks, Kathy. I just, by and large, I think that the policies that we've got are good. I know it's, I can't imagine a 20-minute fix at 2 a.m. I think while it's going to be an expensive evening, if it is indeed on that person's property and not a city problem, that it could be an expensive 4-hour or expensive call out. But yeah, the collective agreement, the 4 hours and the number of times it happens, I think we've got a pretty good system in place. And I think that the communications have been tweaked. So I'm satisfied that we've got a system that'll work 95% of the time and be you know, a rational approach to a late night call.
Okay, thank you. Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. That's pretty much exactly the way I was going to articulate it. We do have an excellent policy, I think, and an emergency like it would cost is never a 4-hour fix. And this is about cost recovery. It's not about revenue generating. And I would challenge it as a citizen if I were paying out of my pocket for an emergency in somebody else's yard.
Okay, so Dirk, unless you want to make a motion about changing something or vote against this policy, I'm going to call the question on this one. I think we've had a good discussion on it. Do you want to do anything else?
No, I think it'd be a losing battle anyway. So
I think it would be.
it's been
Okay.
my
So this
concerns with the
is
residents.
policy review third-party charges, and this is that we approve it as presented. So all in favor? Okay. And opposed?
In favor.
Want to be opposed, Dirk? Okay, Dirk's opposed. Terry, you're for it?
I'm for it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so now we are at consideration of permissive tax exemption applications. This is a pretty fat agenda tonight, there is no doubt. So I'd sent an email around suggesting a process about this if we wanted to follow that. And, we talk about, how long they're going to get exemptions for and who's going to get them. And I had a conversation, one of my conversations with staff was like, honestly, this is a lot of work and we kind of repeat these all the time. So I'd suggested 2 years because that would put it into the next council, but honestly, we could go 4 years and that would put it into the next council as well. But it would save a lot of staff time and it would save a lot of these groups time to not have to be filling out this application every time. So if we wanted to have a motion about length of time, I think we need to consider that. So what I was going to say is, you have the motion about length of time, figure that first, and then we can always make exceptions to it. And then we'll talk about the actual groups. Dirk, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion for 2 years. I think that it's easier on staff to not do it all the time. That also 2 years doesn't hamstring the next council for the first 3 of their term or whatever it might be. So I think that it gives us an opportunity to get their feet on the ground.
Okay, so let me get a seconder before you defend your position.
yeah.
Janice is a seconder. Janice is a seconder. Okay, go ahead, Dirk.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think it should be a 2-year term for the reasons that I just outlined.
Okay, and Janice?
I actually disagree with Dirk, and not because of just the 2 years. So if you think about the time of the year that we're doing this now, we're doing it summer 2021 for the 2022 beyond revitalization, or sorry, the permissive tax exemptions. If we do 2 years, the new council will have been elected in October, and they'll be doing it within less than a year of being in. They'll be doing it with less than a year having been in office, because they're going to get elected next year, and then they'll have to do it in less than a year. I had actually thought that 3 years would be good. That gives whoever the new council, who's ever on the new council, we all remember how steep that learning curve was that first year. It gives them a chance to get their feet underneath them, get a breath, and then this, as Kathy has mentioned, this is a significant amount of work. They would be approaching it in their second summer of their term for the following year. So they would really only be, we wouldn't be handcuffing them for any significant portion of their term. It would be for the first year and a half, I guess.
Okay, thanks. Let's see, Andy, and then I'm going to get other comments before I go back to Dirk. So Andy?
Well, I have no problem with 3 years. I think it probably makes sense. I like Janice's argument there. But also recognize that there could be new applicants coming in. They're still going to be invited, I'm assuming, on an annual basis.
True, that's true. Chris, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, and I like the 3 year. Well, I also like the 4 year, Kathy. But I think 4 years might push it to an opportunity for the next council to make a decision and then not have to look at it again. I think that it's important that we look at it at least twice in the term and see the fruits or the not of our decision.
Okay, other comments before I'm going to go back to Dirk? Stuart?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem such a substantive decision that I am too concerned about it. I mean, I'm happy with pushing it out for a longer period of time just to make it easier on everybody, as long as there's some process for checking in on an annual basis to make sure they're still in compliance with the criteria that we've set. I don't find it particularly complicated. I don't feel like we've made big changes in the time that I've been looking at these things. They seem pretty much the same every time. So yeah, I'm happy to go with whatever.
Okay. Okay, Dirk? Then we're call the question on 2 years.
Yeah, I agree with Janice and Andy and Chris, and but I did my math differently. So I made an assumption that a 2-year term would mean the next council is reviewing it sometime in later 2023. But if a 3-year term means that, then I mean that's gives them a year to get into it. So whatever the number is.
Okay, why don't we vote down the 2 years? Somebody put a motion for 3 and we're good to go. How about that? Okay,
Right,
all
my
in favor of 2 years? All in favor of 2 years? All opposed to 2 years? Yes. Okay, new motion.
Opposed.
Dirk, you want to make the next motion?
I'll second Janice's motion.
Okay, Janice made a motion for 3 years and Dirk seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor of 3 years? Okay, good. Okay, 3 years. Okay, so now, when you did look at the list that was in our packet, I'm going to ask, go down, start at the top, and I'm going to go ask if you don't want that particular group to get either an exemption or the percentage of exemption, or you don't want them to get 3 years, tell me their name, and those will be ones we discuss, okay? And if you don't object to them, then they're going to go through without discussion. Okay, everybody got it? Okay. Okay, so we've got the Roman Catholic Church. Okay,
It's Terry here. I'd like to discuss that.
okay, we're going to discuss the church. And then we've got the United Church. Church, Terry, how are you on the United Church?
Just fine.
Okay. Okay, now we've got the Roman Catholic Church, the land. Janice wants to
I'd
discuss.
like to
the
discuss
land.
that as well.
Okay, okay, and Terry's on the land. And United Church, land. Okay, Janice is on the land. Okay, so now we've got the thrift store, the healthcare auxiliary. Anybody want to discuss that?
I'd like to discuss that.
Okay. And we've got Roslyn Child Care Society.
Yes,
I want to discuss that.
I
Okay.
want to discuss that.
Hey, we're not getting any of these off the list. Roslyn Light Opera. Anybody want to discuss Roslyn Light Opera? Okay, we're looking to let that one go. Canadian Legion. Let
I
that
would
one.
discuss that.
Oh, you do? Okay. Now, you know, this isn't the bar part of it. This is the other part, right? There's two parts.
Correct. So no, okay, I'll let it go.
Okay. Golden City Manor. Any discussion on that? Oh, okay. Stuart says yes to that one. Lower Columbia Affordable Housing. This is for their fourplex on First Avenue, which they get 75% because only 3/4 of the units are affordable housing, one market. Okay, no discussion there. Lower Columbia Affordable Housing for Third Avenue. This will be the upcoming project. Okay. Roslyn C. Oh, Janice?
I'd like to discuss that one.
Okay, are you on, wait, are you on Lower Columbia or are you on seniors?
Lower Columbia.
Okay, Lower Columbia. And how about seniors? We're okay with seniors? Okay. Okay, now we've got Seven Summits. Seven Summits, which I think we got some clarity on this. They don't pay taxes, right? Their thing is through the through the United Church. Is that right, Mike? I'm wondering why they're even here.
Just to be named, it's so yeah, they'd be covered under the, it's just to name them in the permissive exemption where they're going to have like a commercial lease. It just gives us greater certainty.
Okay. Okay, are we good with that? All right, Scouts, the Scouts Hall. Good with that. Okay, Search and Rescue. Rescue, good with that. Roslyn
But
Arts. Oh,
We had that one confirmed that the building is actually owned not by Search and Rescue, correct?
yes, I think that's true. So is this, the application was by Search and Rescue, but it really should have been by
Yeah.
Davies?
No, but they have a lease on the building,
Yeah,
So how does
which
that
allows
work?
them to apply because they're a society.
So how does that work? They are
oh,
paying.
right, because they have to apply because they're the society.
Right, and the revitalization that Davies Service and Sales has only covers the municipal portion, whereas the permissive will cover all taxing authorities.
But this does just cover the portion of the building that is operated by Search and Rescue, because part of it isn't part of it private or not? No, maybe the whole thing, wait, no, I guess the whole thing is, all right, so I'm sorry, I'm getting confused with a different building. That's right, okay. Are we good with that one? Search and rescue? Great article about them in the paper the other day. Okay, Roslyn Art Society, this is a new one. All good with that? Okay, and Roslyn Historical Museum, good with that?
I'd like to talk about
Cricket.
that.
You want to talk about the museum? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we have got some to talk about. Well, let's go back up and we'll talk about the Roman Catholic Church. Who wanted to talk about that? Terry, you want to talk about that? Now, this is the statutory one though, right, Mike? We don't have a lot of choice about this one, do we?
Correct. Yeah, it's grandfathered through and does have a statutory automatic exemption.
Okay, so there is,
For the church itself and the land that it sits on. I believe Elma had given you council a thorough report on that. So it's automatic for the building and whatever piece of land the building sits on.
right, so we don't have anything really to discuss about that. The only thing we would have to discuss about is any other land that surrounds the building, right? Okay, so Terry, I think this was yours.
Yeah.
but
Well,
we
that
don't-
kind of puts a damper on my discussion. I mean, if it's statutory, I don't want to waste anybody's time, but I will bring into question my thoughts around this is that this relates to the residential schools, and I wonder if we are if this is a time to say let's not, as an institution, not the good people in Rawson who attend the church, of course, but because this might represent some financial consideration for them. But I, generally speaking, think that the Roman Catholic Church as an institution across this country should be made to pay taxes in lieu
Oh,
of.
we could do that on the land
okay.
portion, the part that isn't statutory.
Okay, I'm game.
Okay, so you want to make a motion. Let's just, well, nobody wanted to talk about the United Church, so let's just jump down, and now we're talking about the land. And Mike, you can chime in on this, or Brian, if you have anything, because it looks like we're about to have a motion to delete that exemption. Is that the motion you want to make, Terry?
It is.
Okay, and do we have a seconder for that motion? Janice seconds, okay, and I think you've made a good
Made my point. Yeah.
You made a point. Janice, you want to speak to it?
Yeah, the only thing I was gonna say about that, I agree with Terry. And also, when we give a permissive tax exemption, we exempt that applicant from all tax authorities. So, it's not just, we're not just covering a municipal portion through the rest of our taxpayers. We're also increasing the requisition from the region, the hospitals, schools, everything else that these taxpayers would, or these property owners would normally pay. And I fully support having that land around the church be taxed. It's not clearly from their financials, they can afford to pay that. It's not a huge amount of money, but it is about, it's extra money that goes in not only to our municipal tax revenues, but to help the whole community, which apparently is what they try and do. But it also it'll also help to support our schools, our hospitals, and our regional services.
Okay, any other comments on this? Deleting the, yes, Stuart?
Yeah, I'm fine with churches chipping in to contribute to the tax base for the land around that they own. I think when they own a lot of land, they can contribute. I don't know about singling out. I mean, notwithstanding the recent revelations about the history of the Catholic Church in Canada. I mean, I really haven't put any time into evaluating the historical record of the various churches. It's possible if we dig deeply there may be a lot of problems in a lot of institutions past. I'd support a more general policy where we're going to tax the land surrounding churches, if that's something we can do. I don't know whether I'm comfortable with just singling out the Catholic Church in this instance. I just haven't done any research about the appropriateness of it, or really considered, on what basis I would do that.
Okay, Andy and then Dirk.
Well, I'm pretty sure the United Church has been implicated in similar atrocities as too. So they ran residential schools, and if that's part of the argument, then we should definitely not just limit it to the Catholic Church in this case. But I think I like Janice's argument. I think it is important that the institutions, the religious institutions, do have the advantages of being supported by the community, and there's an opportunity here to give back at least a small percentage and support the services that all the residents pay into.
Okay, Dirk and then Chris. Okay, try and say something new, guys, because we need to move on. If there's something new you want to do, otherwise we want to keep moving. Dirk?
I think all churches should pay all taxes. I don't think there should be exemptions. So I'm definitely in favor of taxing the land that's not under a church.
Okay, Chris.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. We in the paper was 90% Rossland, 10% other, 90% Rossland of their 110 people is 99 people. I think paying tax on that land is important, and it's being supported by the rest of our community.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. We are not giving a tax exemption on the land of the Roman Catholic Church. We'll do United Church next. All in favor? Okay, that one's gone. All right, now let's look at the United Church, and Stu made a good point about it. We have a motion of some sort. Andy? Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry, same. We should not provide the exemption for the property surrounding the church in this case.
Okay,
Now,
yeah, Janice, you were the seconder?
Yep.
Okay. I don't think we need a lot of discussion on this. We've already had it. Stuart, you want to say something? Are you ready?
I'm voting in favor fast.
Okay, good. Vote. Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, there's a little time delay on the Zoom call tonight. Okay, now somebody wanted to discuss the thrift store. Who was that?
It was me.
Okay, Janice.
Yeah, so I'm always been very supportive of the thrift stores' work and the support they do and the amount of volunteerism they have. And I've always justified the permissive tax exemption by saying, they're taking $2,600 of taxes that they don't pay for us, and they're leveraging it, and they're turning it into anywhere from $125,000 to $175,000 that they put into the hospital. As I've gone through the process of being on council and learned more and more, I look at that and I know that if we were to take their permissive tax exemption away, we wouldn't be shutting them down. What we'd be doing is we'd be reducing the amount of money that they can put into or donate to the hospital society by about $5,000 a year. However, we would be supporting Rosslanders services, we would be supporting regional services, all those things I talked about earlier. So I'm going to make a motion to retract the permissive tax exemption for the thrift store.
Okay, so Andy's going to second it. Let's go with the motion first and then the justification once we get a seconder. Andy, you are seconding it. Do you want to add to any of that?
Yep, for all those reasons.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment on that? Dirk?
I think it's worth pointing out that they do provide a very important service in upcycling or recycling or reducing our GHG impacts, and I think they ought to be encouraged and rewarded for that as well. So I would be voting for the exemption or whatever that. I'd leave it the same.
Okay, that would be a different motion if this one fails. I don't think that this motion would cause them to change the way they behave. I'm guessing it wouldn't. They will operate the same. They just won't quite have the same level. They'll be short a little bit of money that they would have otherwise made. Okay, any other comments before I call the question? All in favor of no tax exemption for the thrift store? Okay, and opposed? Dirk's opposed. Okay. Oh, Terry, where were you on that?
That's a good question. I'm gonna actually vote against that. I think they should not be penalized. I love Janice's reasons too, but for the work that they do, and I'm gonna vote against that.
Okay, so you and Dirk vote against it, but it did pass. All right, who wanted to talk about Childcare Society besides everybody? You want to start that off? Make a
I did
motion.
mention that,
Okay. What's your motion, Andy?
that we don't give them an exemption.
Okay, and do we have a seconder? Okay, we've got Dirk as a seconder there. Okay, and do you want to speak to it?
Just that it's a competitive business, even though it's run by a society, and there's many other childcare services being offered in the community, and I think it puts everybody on a level playing field.
Yeah. Dirk, you want to add to that? No. Anybody else want to comment? Chris?
Reserves and income levels are trending extremely high. Wages and payroll, they're not in need of support. We've got 46 spaces there. It'll open up opportunities, hopefully, for more spaces in Rossland when the playing field is a little bit more level. And the rent that they pay is well below market rate. So it's they're given a lot of leeway in a lot of ways. So I'd be voting against it too.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to call the question on this one. No exemption for childcare. Much as we love children. Next one that we want to talk about was Golden City Manor. Who had that one? Janice, was that you? Oh, Stuart, that was you.
On a little nitpicky thing, on their application, they say they're not in compliance with municipal policies, plans, bylaws, and regulations.
They said they weren't?
So it says.
I'm thinking maybe they checked the wrong box.
They wrote in by hand.
Oh.
Maybe they did read the question wrong.
Maybe.
It didn't seem like there was a lot of detail in the application, and maybe that was a mistake. I also didn't have any information or clarity about exactly what the low-income standards are there in the Golden City Manor. Why are we giving these people a tax exemption and not other low-income people in the community?
Well, it is a low income facility. I think I had that same question, like, well, I was trying to figure out what the rents were. I mean, it is part of CMHC, and so they are rent subsidies, but I don't know. Brian, do you know anything about that? Or Mike, either of you?
No, I don't have any information on that particular question.
Yeah, I mean, we do, it's like Lower Columbia Affordable Housing, they provide affordable housing at a reduced rent for the apartments that they run. And this is the same thing. This society provides reduced rent. I mean, I was trying to figure it out. I was looking, it was like rent's about $500 a month or something down there, but I don't know what their criteria is. I have heard that it's based on income. It isn't based on assets. So you could have like a ton of money, but you just don't have income. And you could still be eligible, but I honestly don't know. So,
yeah, well, I mean, many retired people don't have high incomes, but they may have high assets.
That's true.
Again, I don't. The distinction would be in the details. To me, I'm not aware of, if this is delivering to genuine need in the community. I'm all for it. I just don't have that information in front of me to decide why this group of people, some who, again, I don't have detailed knowledge of who's in there and what their circumstances are. They just don't seem to be the most destitute members of our community.
Yeah, I honestly don't know that. Now, I've kind of forgotten, do we have to get this in by October 31st, Brian, to get these exemptions lined up? We could put this one on hold and ask for more information.
Yeah.
So, sorry, just real quick, for this process here is just to get an idea from council so staff can develop the bylaw. And then for the next meeting in September, a bylaw will come forward with the motions here to kind of maintain to do our 3 readings of the bylaw, and then we do public notification and consultation, and then we have a meeting, and then we adopt it. So it has to be done by October 31st, but we have some time to, if council look for clarification on anything, we could probably look to see what we need to do in order to get ready for September.
Okay, that sounds good. So Stuart, would you like to put this one on hold and have some questions asked of the
Yes,
society?
yes, I would like to be satisfied that they are in compliance with the city's regulations. And I would like some more information on the eligibility criteria to make sure that we are actually providing a tax exemption for people that are actually in need, rather than just, whatever other, if there's some other criteria. Without understanding that, I'm not comfortable with supporting that at this point.
Okay, so that's Stuart's motion, that we're going to get more information from the society. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Okay, Andy seconds. Okay, so Brian, is that enough information for staff to reach out to the society to get more information for us?
I think
Yeah.
Mike's saying he's good.
Mike says good. Okay, perfect. So we're putting that one on hold for now, pending more information. I think those are good questions. Okay, now the next one to discuss, Janice, you wanted to discuss Lower Columbia affordable housing for 3rd Avenue. I think
Yeah,
that
I'd like to make a motion to give them 100% permissive exemption for 1 year.
for 1 year.
I don't get to tell you why until I get a seconder.
You get a seconder. Okay, so Andy seconds. All right, now tell us
So
what.
you can't change the rules just because you're so
No,
curious
no,
about what
no.
I'm going to say.
I was just so surprised that you didn't go right into it. I was curious. No, that's good. Tell us why. Tell us why.
Clearly, old dogs can learn new tricks.
Woof, woof.
So here's my thinking. So I'd like to put 100% for 1 year. We know that BC Assessment isn't going to crank up the value of that property until they get an occupancy permit anyway. But it is likely that there may be some tax issues for them next year when they're in the middle of building, they have no occupancy. They could reapply next year if there are delays in getting to occupancy, and it's going to be us. We'll look at it. We can make a decision at that point. I'm not super comfortable with giving them a permissive exemption for a number of reasons. One is that it eliminates revenue to all those taxation sources, or the taxation that we talked about, regional, hospital, everything. And that the whole, our whole justification that we've used for leasing the land from the city at no cost, reducing the cost to build by combining City Hall, taking on all the staff work, the admin, applying for grants, taking on some of the financial risks to get the building going, was so that it could provide additional tax revenue. The total 5-year cost of the proposed exemption is estimated at $96,000, and that has to be covered by, that's just the municipal, that has to be covered by the rest of Rawson taxpayers. We can assume that there's another $96,000 of other taxation sources that is also going to have to be covered by the rest of the Rawson taxpayers as well. So it's a really big chunk of money. We know that rent or vacancy is really low in Rawson. These units will be in demand from day one. I suspect they'll be full. And while the society will need to build up a reserve and to manage the property properly, they should have a full 10-year new home warranty on this building. So they shouldn't be subject to any major repairs in the first 10 years that shouldn't be covered underneath that warranty. So I'm not sure that we necessarily need to give them a permissive tax exemption. This building's going to go ahead whether we do it or not. And I think it's in the best interest of the community to get those, to add that tax revenue to help to reduce the burden to everybody else in town, not increase it.
Okay, Andy, you were the seconder, I think.
I was, and for all those reasons, I'm inclined to agree with Janice on this one. And I also think a year of grace will give us an opportunity to see how this project unfolds, not only from completion of construction, but also about its occupancy potential and what that ends up being. So I'm going to I'm going to agree with this at this time. And again, a year down the road, we can take a look at this project once again.
Okay, other comments? Brian?
Yeah, just for clarification, so the year of grace you're actually not gonna see anything substantial there because this is for 2022. So we're basically keeping the rate of taxation on that bare land strata property, which we own right now as a city. They're not paying anything on it anyway next year doing this. What you would want, if you're gonna give them 1 year of grace, you would be looking for 2023, because that would be their first year of actually operating the facility and taking a look at that. And then just on another note, with the committee that we have with this project committee that we deal with, the pro forma that we've been looking at through BC Housing and Lower Columbia Affordable Housing and the consultants on that was to do a scaled up basically for about 4 or 5 years of permissive tax exemption over the course of a 25-year period to allow them to develop the operations that they need to sustain what they have to do here from a staffing perspective, because this is by far the biggest project that Lower Columbia has ever been taking a part of, and they're going to actually be staffing up a little bit on that. So this was also to help kind of build success for that project, but that was one of the main reasons why that performer was kind of looked at the beginning, with the caveat that we said from the beginning as well that, you know, just because you're asking for it doesn't mean that you're going to get it. So plan financially and plan wise, and then we'll see how it flies on when it gets to council for review.
Yeah, okay. Stuart, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, my first question, I think Brian's addressed. You know, I had been operating, you know, under the understanding that there were agreements in place. Doesn't sound like they were signed off, locked in agreements, but you know, that's certainly what we'd been told over time. You know, I don't know. You know, I would hope we're still acting in good faith when we're working with a non-profit that is working to try and bring this project to the community. That we're not, you know, if the understanding was we were going to scale them to a tax-paying position, I hope we're not ambushing them unnecessarily. If that's the understanding we've been working towards, and also just the implications on the rental rates. You know, the purpose of this project is to provide affordable housing. The money doesn't come from anywhere else. The costs of the project and the costs that we put on the organisation are going to be reflected in the rates of the people that are going to be renting there. I'm not exactly sure what that translates to as far as, you know, is it a significant increase in the cost of a rental unit? I have no idea, but you know, I wouldn't want us to be making them, you know, to be defeating the purpose of offering affordable units.
Yeah,
I don't have that information in front of me.
No, I think you make a good point, and I do. Yes, there hasn't been any agreements with them. They knew it was a council decision. They knew it would come to council, but we have all been operating under sort of the assumption that would be what happened. The first 5 years would be a scaled down thing, and I would advise us to be patient. I understand Janice's point for sure, but I think this is a huge undertaking, and you know, supporting it. I think I will vote against this motion because I think we should be supporting it. And they are factoring in what rents they're going to be able to charge based on that. And it is going to take them, yes, there's big high demand, but it's going to take them a bit to get up and running on this. And I want to set them up for success. So, okay, any other oh, Janice. And then Dirk.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, I sit on the committee that's been working with the Rawson Midtown project, and you know, LC, the pro forma is designed so that the rents, really the point of the permissive tax exemption was for them to build a rainy day fund for, it will not make an effect, it will not affect the rents that are charged. And as Kathy has said, well, it's been talked about, it certainly was never presented as absolutely we're going to do that, because it has to come to council.
Yeah, Dirk.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with Janice's, you know, giving them a year and then discussing it next year, because we don't know what it would look like if we get into, the first few months of rent for that place and they can't find anybody to rent, then certainly it behooves us to assist them. But if, like Janice thinks it's full immediately with a wait list, then makes sense to dig right into reality with the entire operation. So, yeah.
Okay, any other comments, or I'm going to call the question? This is to give a,
Steph?
Terry? Yeah, go
Hi,
ahead.
thanks. Well, I'm a tad confused because I thought I heard from Brian that Janice's motion was sort of a moot point, that there wouldn't be any tax to defer on the first year. Can you clarify that, please?
Brian?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how the tax exemption works is that the October 31st is the validation point for what the property was supposed to be valued at as of July 1st. Then taxation is based on that for the next year. So by giving a 1-year tax exemption for year 2022, we're basically keeping the property at pretty much zero, which doesn't allow for anything to really happen there or for them to get their feet wet, because they're not really even, like, the project's supposed to be done by October 2022. We're behind maybe 2 weeks now, give or take. So, and that's, by the time there's deficiencies and stuff, then we kind of assume, from a staff perspective, that they might not even be in there till like January or February, depending on like getting occupancy and finalizing all that kind of stuff. So with that being said, now we're moving into 2023. So they would have to sit down, if they didn't get an exemption for 2023, then they would, and we talked about this year, it might be a little bit too soon for them to try to figure out renting. And I'm not quite sure with Councilor Nightingale, like, I don't know, I definitely was the permissive exemption was to help with some rainy day stuff, but I don't know how much that actually impacts the rental rates and the numbers going back and forth in regards to what they're going to be charging, because the potential FCM grant as well is going to play into that, which we'll find out in the next little while about that one as well. So there's still some moving parts overall onto their operating costs and what the actual rent will be for those facilities moving forward in 2023. So the 1 year, we'll basically sit down and look at it this time next year, and we won't be that much further ahead, except for we know when they're going to be able to move in.
Well, so maybe we should just can this motion and put this one off till next year, since there's not going to be anything for 2022 anyway.
Well,
right?
There'll be some, because they're gonna take a look at the building that is there right now. So we need one for sure for next year, but I'm saying from a progressive tax exemption to give them feet in the water to run a year, we would have to give 2, because they're actually not going to be in the building next year. But if we don't do it this year, then we do our tax exemption next year, it's going to be valued on the land that is assessed right now. And if we have a little bit of billing on there, it's going to be more than what it is right now, which is pretty much 0.
Well, it was already assessed for, well, isn't it July 15th where they look at it? So it was a hole in the ground on July 15th.
Yeah, well, yeah, hole in the ground on July 15th is probably minimal stuff because there's no contamination there anymore. But no, we need to make sure that we maintain 2021 levels right now for 2022, which is what this exemption would be for 2022.
Okay. All right. Terry, are you clear with that explanation?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I forget who I was calling on next. Was it Stuart? Who had their hand up after Terry? No, maybe.
I did, but I'm more confused now.
Okay. Andy, are you more confused too?
No, I understand what's being said. Thanks, Brian. And I know that the assessor is likely coming back before October 31st, because I just went through this with Dirk's place, meeting the assessor while he was away at the time. But as I understand, the guy will be coming back before the end of October and reassessing the true value at that point. And that's based on Texas for the upcoming year for 2021, 2022. So there will be some value put to the building at that point. And I'm in full agreement with waiting for a year. So it would be, the exemption would be actually for 2023. That's what I would consider.
Janice?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So it does look like the value of the land and property will go up for the next taxation year. They obviously will not have occupancy until at the earliest late 2022. So I think we want to make sure that we cover them for the next taxation period, which goes from 2021 into 2022. And then my motion suggests that we revisit it, and which it'll be about this time of year. So we should have a much better picture of A, how well the project is going along, and also B, what kind of demand that they're seeing for it. And essentially we'll just ask we'll ask Lower Columbia Housing Society to hang on to their paperwork, change the dates, and send it back in for the deadline next year. And then we'll have a better chance to look at this and decide if we need to be in a position that we need to give them some sort of break for a number of years, or if they're going to be full right from the get-go and we're on time or early and they're going to have occupancy almost immediately.
Okay, Stuart.
Yeah, I'm okay with that sort of, staged approach. I'd just like to hear from Lower Columbia Affordable Housing Society's point of view on this too, just so I fully appreciate what their position is before we commit to making them pay.
Okay, so we could pass this motion for the 1 year, and then we'll revisit it. And at that point, if we decide we want to give them a full 5 years, 100% and down, we could go from there if we wish, or whatever we want to do. I think that's fine.
We get more information at that point.
That's right. We can get more information. And my understanding was that they did use the permissive tax exemption to calculate their rents. It wasn't just a rainy day fund that it was figuring in, but they had so many moving parts that those rents still aren't set yet because of all these other things like the FCM grant that's coming in. So, okay, so good discussion. I think I'll call the question on the. Oh yeah, Terry.
Sorry, one more question. Doesn't our 3-year our 3-year tax program tax exemption program that we talked about, isn't that going to get in the way of this 1 year thing?
No, because we were able to make exceptions to that when we said that. They were all for 3 years unless we made the exception, and this is the exception. So we're 100% 1 year, and then we're going to revisit it and when we have more information. Okay.
Thank you.
Is that everybody good? All in favor? And no one opposed. Terry, you're in?
I'm in.
Okay, so 1 year, 100%. Okay, the last one we had to speak about was the museum, and I think, Chris, that was yours.
Yep. Where is it? All right. So, and we've all got to know the museum quite well over the last few years that we've been here, and we all know that the entity requires consistency to be current and to stay with current trends of payroll and rents and everything. It holds all our archives for the city and requires major capital to be open at all times, and has very low reserves. They rely solely on to anything more that they get, they rely on grants. And we've got an excellent staff there. So I'm going to make the motion to have them 5 years at 100%, and even possibly 10 if somebody would be so inclined as to put their hand up for that.
Okay, do we have a seconder for 5 years for the museum? And that is Janice. And Janice, do you want to keep it at 5 or do you want to go for 10?
I over the last couple of years of our term, we've been working with some of our volunteer groups who are really obviously embedded in our operational plans. The museum is one of them. I think that I don't think anything's going to change with the museum. They're always going to be a museum unless they totally fold, and in which case we can't give them any more than we're giving them now. So I think that having the certainty of a 10-year permissive tax exemption would be it would help them. I think we've had this come up with a couple of groups where they went for a grant and they said, well, you have to have a 5-year lease, or you have to have a this long lease or that long lease. I think that having a longer agreement with the city would help them get more funds from other places. And we've been supporting them at 100% anyway. We're not really changing what we're doing here. They've done a great job, as Chris has said, working hard to make themselves relevant and an important part of the community and do community-based activities, lots of kids stuff, lots of adult stuff, hiking on July 1st, all those things. So I would support a 10-year.
Okay, so we're going to have an amended motion that is 10 years exemption for the museum. And it's been moved and seconded, and Stuart has a comment, and then, I don't know whose hand went up first, sorry. I saw Stuart, and then we'll do Dirk and Andy.
I just think while we're discussing the term, I'm not trying to dispute the deservingness of the museum for a tax exemption. I just think procedurally it would be good to have at least every administration have the opportunity to review these things.
Okay, so you'll be voting against this.
I just think, once a term for every administration on a 4-year term just seems a good, some sense of accountability for community values.
Okay, Dirk.
Yeah, ditto.
Okay, Andy.
Same.
Same. Okay. All right. So I'm going to call the question on the 10-year. All in favor? 10-year. Okay. We've got Chris and opposed. Okay. Okay. Let's get another motion about the museum.
I'd like to make it. Put it into the 4th year of the next council.
Okay. So that's 5 years from now.
Sure.
Great.
Give him a chance to think about it again.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
Okay, Andy seconds it, 5 years. Any further discussion on 5 years for the museum? All in favor? All right, very good.
In favor.
Thanks, guys. That worked out just fine. All right, now, oh boy, we are appointing a bylaw officer, that we appoint Jared Saxby as our bylaw officer. Who wants to move that? Andy and Janice, any comments? Everybody wants to move that. We're all good. So, okay, welcome to Jared. Call the question. All in favor? Carrie, you're there, right?
In favor. Yep.
In favor. Okay. Okay, so now here we are to the Roslyn electric vehicle. We just know staff wants that Mustang more than anything else. Though there is a staff recommendation that we approve the tender for the all-wheel drive Mach-E for $63,000. Mover? Stu moves.
I'd like to do that.
Okay, too late, Terry. Sorry, I got Stu and Chris. Stu, comments?
I think they've done their homework. It sounds like the perfect vehicle. I'm fully in support.
Okay, Chris?
Same.
Okay, Terry, you want to comment?
No, I'm in favor.
Okay, anybody else want to comment? Nobody liked the poor little Kona. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the Mach Mustang? Okay.
Favor.
All right, but I want to thank staff for looking into the other options because, there were other options and it's good to, check it out. Okay, a motion for invoices paid as presented. This is for July. Who wants to put their hand up for the big bucks? Chris, seconder, Janice, any comments or questions about that? All in favor? Okay.
Favor.
Now we had an information item about the Center Star Gulch Reservoir Recreational Area. There's no action required on this, but it was information. If anyone wants to make a motion, they can. Stuart.
Just find my notes here. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we form a small committee with representation from council, recreation and operations staff to develop a preliminary plan for a simple swimming facility in the reservoir so that we can get the input from IHA to see if it's actually feasible.
Okay, is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, Andy seconds it.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope,
Wait.
wasn't me. It was Terry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed. Who was it?
It was Terry.
Terry. Okay, Terry was the seconder. Okay, sorry about that, guys.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that staff has the motion. Rachel is taking notes and monitoring the phone and running the Zoom call?
I have that a small committee be formed from council and recreation staff to form a plan to see
And-
the. Oh, sorry,
And
Stu.
operations stuff.
And operations, sorry. I'll just throw that in there. Operations and recreation staff to form a plan to see the feasibility of swimming in the reservoir.
Yeah, a preliminary plan so that we can
Preliminary
get feedback from IHA.
Okay.
Okay, you didn't have citizens on that. It's just recreation, operations, and council.
Yes, that's
Right.
correct.
Okay. Okay, and that motion was seconded. So who wishes to speak? Stuart, start it up.
Yeah, look, I think we're not going to know if this actually is possible or affordable until we have all the information. And the only way we're going to get the information is to develop a rudimentary plan that makes enough sense based on all the recreation task force and previous ISL reports and all the ideas that have come up many times in the community. We need to put that together into a basic plan. Doesn't have to be too advanced, because we really just want something that we can bring to IHA so they can actually give us some substantive feedback on what is actually possible. And then we can have something we can realistically consider. Until that point, it's all conjecture. You know, I think it would be good if it's possible to do it and preserve the safety of our drinking water, and it's affordable, then it would be a good thing to have. But we're not going to know that until we go through the process. So I'd like to go through the process.
Okay, Terry, you were the seconder.
Yeah, I'm with Stuart. We need more information. You know, it may run into a roadblock here or there because of either drinking water or safety or cost. But I would like to dig a little deeper into that as well. So I agree with Stu's motion.
Okay, Dirk and then Janice.
Yeah, I'm uncertain why we need to have more of a plan to be able to go to IHA. I am sure they could comment given some of the information that is here. If we are going to put together a group, I do think it should have citizens involved as well, because I think that this will be more contentious than just a health or cost issue. So I think if we are going to go with the working group, I think it should have citizens. I question whether or not we really need a working group. We can just ask IHA for, can we swim here?
I'd like staff to comment on that comment. Scott? Oh, I can't hear you.
There we go.
Okay.
All right, so yeah, we did go to IHA and I looked up the other reports, and IHA's was the same comments. It's up to the city. The liability goes on the city. The only thing that they said, if you want to take one of your reservoirs offline and you want to put it back online, you would have to do a boil water advisory and do a whole bunch of testing. You just can't have it online while it's swimming. So we can go back to IHA, but they're going to say most likely the same thing, that it's basically your guys' jurisdiction and responsibility, right? Now, the question that really needs to be looked at is our vulnerability. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, Janice.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we're going to have a master recreation plan running all next year or next year and a half, shouldn't the exploration of this be part of that process rather than a separate
Yeah, that makes
issue that we do now and then do again?
Yeah. Scott, do you have your hand? Oh, no, you just took your hand down. Okay. Okay, that's a good point. Anyone else want to comment? You know what, I'll make a comment. I love the idea of a bikeable water source. I really do. But I'm also really concerned about where we're going climate-wise and what our water needs are and how vulnerable we really are, whether it's wildfire or whether it's drinking water or whatever. And I think we'd be hard pressed. We've got people already complaining that we're in stage 3 water restrictions and probably going to go to stage 4. And we have one of our reservoirs offline. You know, I don't know. I used to be more enthusiastic about this than I am today. So I'm actually not in favor of it, sadly. In favor of it in my heart, but not in my mind. Andy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm going to be the same. We looked at this, in the last council, and it came up. And I had reservations right off the bat as far as the restriction on water drinking usage. And when IHA came back and said, it's the risk and liability goes back onto the city, and that we wouldn't be allowed to use the water in the reservoir for drinking water purposes with swimming, then for me it was a no-brainer. And then factoring in the fire risks and all the other issues. It's been nice to have a little swimming hole, but drinking water is much more precious to me than the ability to be able to swim in it.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, I'm in the complete agreement with that as well. I mean, originally I was all for it because I think it would be excellent for our tourism here. However, after seeing boil water advisory and then us being without water for 4 months, and that aspect of it had to come back online. And then given what we've just gone through or going through right now this summer, it's just water's too precious here.
Okay, so we're going to call the question about putting this committee together. And it doesn't have to be the end of the issue, because as Janice points out, this would be something that would be looked at in a rec master plan, because there has been a lot of demand for a local swimming hole, but whether it's practical or not, just not sure. Oh, Stuart, something before we call the question?
Yeah, I just want to make the case that, I appreciate all the concerns. Scott really did articulate them well. They're not things we can easily minimize. I just don't think until you go through the exercise that you can't judge in advance that there aren't practical solutions for all of them. It seems at least possible that we could, and that the possible benefit, if we could actually come up with a plan that addressed our actual, the actual issues, then it would be great. I'm not saying that's necessarily possible to do. I would just like to explore it to the extent that we rule out that we can or can't do it.
Okay, thanks. All right, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of forming a committee to look into this?
I'm in favor.
Okay, so that's Terry and Stuart, and opposed? Okay, sorry guys, it's defeated, but argue for it in the master rec plan. Okay, so now we have some reports for information. I'm going to go through them. If anyone has any comments or questions, stop me if you've heard this one before. So building permit report, anybody? And building permit inspection report. Sure been busy. Step code energy rebates. Seemed like nothing new there. Public Works report for June and July. Okay, water production report for June and July. Not good for rain or water. Okay, the Roslyn Midtown project status report, we're going to start getting those regularly now that the project is actually underway. So you can look forward to seeing those, should be more monthly.
Nice to see concrete being poured too, by the way.
Yeah, there's actual stuff.
I would be nice if we could get reports that are more timely, as if we got to wait a whole month, there's a lot happens in a month in a construction project.
Well, that's true, but this is the June and July. We just started, the construction started in July. This was the July report, and this is now August 9th. So I'm not sure.
I realize under the circumstances that, this part of this project is taking a while to get off the ground, and we were all hoping it was going to be an earlier start than this. But now that there's concrete being poured and the site's prepared, things will move a lot quicker. And I guess maybe it's just.
And we'll still get a monthly report. I believe
right,
it.
a month behind though, information wise.
Okay, Scott wants to speak, and Brian, comments?
Yeah, just for your information, now that things are going a lot quicker, we're going to be getting a more updated report to similar to the Spokane and Washington Street improvements. So yeah, that's what we're working on towards right now.
Okay, great. Brian? No, Brian disappeared. Scott disappeared. Okay. Anybody has comments on updated task lists they want to talk about? No, and hold on, I've lost track. Are we done? We might be done. Oh, crap, we got to get to members' reports. Okay, so letter to the province about CAREP, our CAREP funds. So this is a motion that I actually was thinking we should do. The RDKB, I mean, oh God, this letter had gone to CAREP from another municipality, another jurisdiction, RDCK, I think it was. And I'm suggesting that we do a similar thing because they are changing that program significantly, and it could end up being, application grant based. It could disappear entirely. There's not been, as far as I know, there haven't been any updates. And it would be a really inefficient way to impact our ability to get our projects completed. So that's the motion, that Rosslyn Council submit a letter of concern about the discontinuation of CAREP and strongly support continuation of similar program. So does anyone want to make the motion? Andy will make it, and a seconder. Janice will second it. Any discussion? Pretty basic. Okay, call the question. All in favor of the letter? Okay. All right, now we are into members' reports. So I will start with Dirk.
Okay, you woke me up. All this talk about water. I can only think about water. I noted in town that a number of stores are now mandating masks. I think it's important that people be aware of that. We do have a rather significant regional increase in COVID, to the best of my knowledge. So I think that's important to highlight. I did go see Gold Fever Follies the other day. It was fantastic as always and very safe, wearing our masks inside. And then we did get a request from Happy Hills seeking an exemption from watering restrictions should we hit stage 4 with, I would suggest, reasonable caveats that if we run out of water and we do not have enough to fight fires, then we change it. But I would like to put a motion forward to exempt them in stage 4 from water restrictions.
Okay, do we have a seconder? I'll second it. Okay, Dirk, tell us more.
I do think that this is an opportunity for us to learn how much is being used and what it looks like, and what are the potentials for conservation. I know that they are trying to conserve and they are producing an awful lot of food for the community. I think that this would be a good experiment. We can revisit it if things go awry, but I would like to offer that exemption that they requested should we hit step 4.
Okay, and I support that as well. And one of the reasons is it's proactive, but also because we're not going to meet again until September. And if we don't know when we're going, we don't know when we're going into stage 4. And then should it happen and they don't have the exemption, they're in serious trouble. And I agree with Dirk, they do produce a lot of food for the community, and it's something that we should value. Andy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I've had prior to leaving, I had a couple of people come ask me why we're still watering the recreational our parks to the extent we are under stage 3. I didn't have a good argument for them, other than the fact that in the past, I know this has come up, and we talked to Darren previously. Darren said that if we stopped watering our grass, then not only would the grass die back, but also the weeds would take over, and the costs to maintain those fields would greatly increase in the future. But
okay, I'm going to let Scott answer this, but then I want to keep on the motion that we've got, and then if we have another question about watering other city facilities, we can get to that. But Scott, if you can address Andy's concerns on this one.
Thank you, Andy. Just want to let you know from stage 2, when we went to stage 3, we've been monitoring all our levels in all our parks. We have reduced our watering. We have taken offline the cemetery, our main fields, and yes, weeds will grow and it will take us money, but I felt that it is a necessity at the rate that we were going, because we're a month ahead of what we're normally going. that it would be a good idea. Coming up from stage 2, our reservoirs were looking great. Actually, just so you guys understand how it works is Ophir stabilizes Star Gulch, and we reduced that from 30 to 15%, just by monitoring all the levels. Up before stage 2, we were overflowing on the reservoir, but it went really quick. Residents were using up to 4,200 a day, and luckily they've been falling to stage 3. Got it down to, what was it, 22. So if we or actually 2,000 per day. So if we maintain that, we're looking good, and we should hopefully stick it out. Hopefully we don't have a hot, dry fall. So as far as it goes, we have limited our watering, and because this is dry, we're a month ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so back to the motion to provide an exemption for Happy Valley Farms. Janice, you have your hand up.
There we go. Yep. So I just wanted to point out that their rationale, and a number of you have repeated it. They produce food to feed the community. They produce food to sell to the community.
True.
Yeah. Petri produces beer to sell to the community.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Stuart.
Yeah, I think we're just a bit disconnected from the supply of our water. I mean, if we get to stage 4, it means we don't have any waters in the creeks, and we're already sucking them dry as it is. You know, these arguments seem to be divorced from the actual water supply. It's very dry out there. The creeks are at minimum levels. I think if we get to that point, then we're down to minimal operating levels. The fact that it might compromise their business is, well, that's what happens when you've got a business that relies on water supply in a place with limited supply. I don't have, I mean, we're not telling them to let their plants die. It just means they're not able to make as much money as they otherwise would.
Well, potentially their plants are dying, but let's see, Dirk, and then Janice.
Just do we shut off the water to the hotel or to Roslyn Beer Company when we hit stage 4? Because in theory, fighting fires is more important than beer and hotels. So I think that we have to, you know, if we're not willing to go that far to cut those groups off, then yes, they are selling food, but they should not be cut off because it's food and not beer or hotel rooms.
Yeah. Janice.
Yeah, I was also going to point out that stage 4 doesn't cut them off. They can still water minimally. It's worded so that they can still water. So, you know, there's been some real misinformation that that's it. They can't water anything. They have to sit there and watch everything die, but that's not actually what the bylaw says.
Yeah. It's
Because
not
we're
watering livestock and minimal crop maintenance. So,
yeah, if I could finish, and because of the work that Scott's done with the reservoirs, I mean, we saw in our report when we were discussing the idea of the swimming hole, having Ophir and Star Gulch together. If we only had Ophir, we'd have about 46 days worth of water left at stage 3 consumption, which Scott has gotten down to about 2,000 liters per day. Having Ophir and Star Gulch on gives us 4.5 months, which gets us into November. So, you know, yeah, it's at stage 3, there's absolutely no effect on anyone growing anything. And at stage 4, whether it's being grown at home or whether it's being grown commercially, they can still water.
Okay.
We're not telling them no.
Okay, I think we have lost Terry. I don't see Terry there anymore. Okay, any other comments on this, or we'll call the question for an exemption? Oh, Terry's back. Terry, do you want to speak to this? Maybe you're there. Maybe not.
Can we get the question again, please?
the motion was to provide Happy Hills an exemption if we get to stage 4, but there was a caveat in there, Dirk, which I don't recall what you said. That we reserve the right to cut them off if we had to or something, right? Something like that.
Yeah, if we're truly, really running out of water. But I was,
Isn't that what stage 4 is?
well, not really. I guess if we can still water gardens and supply hotels and such, then we're not really running out. We're kind of running out. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments on this before we call the question? Anybody want to say anything else? Okay, so here's to providing, and wait, did you want to clarify? I just want to know if staff has the motion that does have the caveat, whatever the caveat was.
Can Dirk just repeat it, please?
Yeah, my caveat was kind of wishy-washy. I am uncertain now. I would like to provide an exemption. I misread the bylaw. I didn't think that they could keep watering. So I'm a little bit confused now, like a deer in
Well,
headlights.
you can vote against your own motion. We've discussed it. We've discussed it.
I feel like I might support my own motion, fully acknowledging that it will probably be defeated anyways, but I think it's, you know.
Okay. Okay, so I think it's important to get the correct information out there. I think there was some confusion with the applicant thinking that when it said minimal crop maintenance, that meant basically the plants die, as opposed to crop maintenance, is crops are what the plants produce, right? The plant is one thing, the crop is something else. So they're still able to keep their crop going. Dirk.
They may be fearful of the seemingly subjective nature of minimal crop maintenance.
Uh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh.
Chris, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, when's harvest time? Does anybody have that? Like, are they gonna have any crops in September, which will be 3 weeks away?
I think
I have no idea. I think it all comes up at different times.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? We'll call the question. All in favor of giving them an exemption? So, yeah. I'll help them out a little bit, but I think they'll survive without us. Okay, and opposed? Okay, 3. And now where's Terry? Terry, are you there? Well, in any case, the motion fails. It's 3-3. Well, and I think we have lost Terry, and if he's out of range, he's off the reservation for the meeting. Okay, so the motion fails. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, he may have dropped off. Okay, so anything else in your members report, Dirk?
Nope, that's it for me.
Okay, and let's see, Janice, you're next.
Thank you. I attended a Ross and Midtown Project Committee meeting. We discussed the excavation and backfill of the site, the way that part of the build was being managed. A full report in progress is contained in the agenda for this meeting, and that's all I have for this one.
Okay, Andy. We got your report there. That's good.
Yep. Any questions specific to it? Happy to answer.
Okay, no, it's appreciated.
Thank you.
Stuart.
On July 24th, along with yourself, Kathy, we went and talked with Jenny Kwan and Richard Cannings about housing issues in the area. We got to tell them what the issues are in our community, and we got to listen to some of Jenny's ideas. She seems a pretty motivated and creative person. You know, I don't think she's in a position to accomplish too much at the moment, but she's certainly pretty passionate about the issue. And on July 26th, I attended virtually a modernising forest policy engagement session for local government, where the government outlined their proposed changes in forestry policy in British Columbia. The feedback that I and several other people provided was that they were heading in a positive direction, but moving far too slowly is the Coles Notes version. But there will be additional sessions and be able to provide more feedback moving forward.
Oh, good. Will you attend those other sessions? Are they going around?
I've expressed an interest in doing so. Presumably I'll be invited back. I hope I didn't offend them too much.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for attending that. That's great. Okay, Chris, you're up.
On the 15th, we had a Tourism Roslyn meeting that was deferred to the 29th because of low attendance. But we did have a presentation from Dana Harris, BC Hospitality Foundation, on the benefits of the charity and how the foundation helps our community as an example of grants to Selkirk College on behalf of tourism and helping grow the youngins. I also, on the 29th, the events that are upcoming for Tourism Rossland, Single Track 6 is coming back. Look to the website for exact dates on that. Working on wedding packages for next season, so that's going to really increase some room nights in Rossland, which are much needed. If you haven't noticed, the courtyard with the Sphere of Influence by Revolution Cycles is getting a little bit of an upgrade. It's got a bike fixing kiosk, a bike wash, and an information sign that'll be completed hopefully by the end of the week. And the province has extended outdoor patio on streets and red line extensions until June 2022. Originally it was October of this year, October 31st. I had a Heritage Commission meeting on the 19th, working on cleaning and repairing the headstones at the Columbia View Cemetery. And beginning in section 1, there's quite a few damaged or in need of repair headstones. It's going to be quite a project for the Heritage Commission. And then the most recent statement of significance for the Rossland Clubhouse at the golf course is now complete. And that's it.
Okay, great. So I had a meeting with our CBT community liaison to discuss local issues and opportunities. Attended the Midtown meeting that Janice mentioned. I attended a AKBLG executive committee Zoom meeting to discuss the strategic plan. The organization's trying to sort of get itself more organized, which is good. Stu mentioned the meeting with Richard Canning and Jenny Kwan. Jan Morton from Lower Columbia Affordable Housing Society went with us. There were other regional elected people, as well as a bunch of community volunteers from various nonprofits. So it was an interesting group, people that ran food banks and low-income housing and all kinds of different community groups, particularly focused in a lot from Castlegar. I had a terrific Kootenay Mayor's tour on my motorcycle. I went around and visited the mayors of Revelstoke, Radium, Kimberley, and Fernie. And it's really interesting because we all have the same problems, whether it's, housing or labor shortages or, negative impact of people not getting the vaccine. And then the whole challenges with economic and social recovery. So it was a really good trip, and it's always good to connect with those guys in person. I met with the federal Green candidate, that is our own Rosalind Tara House, and she's quite well informed on the issues and is excited about candidacy, just doesn't know whether the RIP will drop this fall or not. And by the way, I think the improvements to the area outside of Revolution look great, really a nice look there. And I have one last question, and this is for Scott, because this did come up and I never heard the answer. In fact, Dirk, I think, was asking it. Is the water that's being used at the MCON lot to damp down the dust, is that treated water or is that coming from a tank, a truck?
That water is coming from a non-potable source. That is not city drinking water.
Good, excellent, right answer. Thank you. Okay, And I think that is it. We have no in-camera tonight. We have no in-camera to declassify, so am I missing anything, people? I don't think so. I think we're done. Right? I've got my page. Oh, I think we can just adjourn the meeting. Motion to adjourn. Janice says yes. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Good job, guys. Way to
Yeah.
get through a big package.
Yeah,
Thanks,
long-
everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So much. Good night,
See you all
staff.
soon.
All right,
Good
thanks
night, all.
everyone.
Take care.